Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode of the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert. We have a lot of guests on this show that do a lot of different things, but this one I think takes the cake. Let me list out all of the crazy things that this person has her hands into. So she's a PhD in psychology. She's the host of the Psychological Strength podcast. She's the president of a company called Sprocket. She's the co-founder of Peak Mind, the Center for Psychological Strength. She's a mother and wife of a family of 4. Like, are you kidding me with all the things that she has going on? So listeners, please welcome to the show, my friend, April Seifert. April, how you doing?
I'm so good and so excited to be here. This is like the highlight of my week, and I've been looking forward to it for a while.
Well, you got a lot of week left. We're recording this on a Wednesday, so let's not get carried away. And I got to tell you, when I have other podcast hosts on the show, I get a little butterfly, like healthy butterflies. Don't get me wrong, but like, I got to step up my game a little bit because you know how to bring it, and you got the good quality gear, so you sound good, and like I gotta step it up a notch.
No way. It's the thing I love about podcasts is that as a medium, it's just so conversational, right? Like there's so much over polished content out there. And I feel like the feel of a podcast and just the way that medium has gone just makes it so that we can just chat and it's so much more relaxed.
Yep. Just a couple of friends chatting. Okay. So before I dig into some stuff, I want to make sure that I address your pronouns. Will you please share your pronouns with me now?
Yeah, she, her.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so so you and I met. I've never. I said this to you, I think via text the other day. I think I consider you a friend, and from a business stance, a very good friend, but just a friend in life. And I've never met you in real life, and that
isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It's disgusting.
You mentioned that over text recently, and I didn't believe it. But then I thought, no, I actually have no idea. And it's funny because there's a couple of other people who I've met and started working with and have actually worked extensively with during COVID. And I remember one of them I met for the first time, and I walked in and I was like, whoa, you're tall. Like what? Because I just expect everybody to be at eye level.
Right. Yeah. Well, the same height
on Zoom. It's so weird.
Everyone's 5'7".
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Well, I'm not. So, and I'll let you decide if I'm taller or shorter. All right, good. All right. So let's dig in. So you, where did you grow up and where were you born and raised?
Yeah, I grew up in North Dakota in a smaller town called Mandan. And North Dakota is like a rectangle. We're right in the middle. It was a pretty rural town, 15,000 people. And it was a cool place to live. But if I'm being totally honest, I always knew growing up that I would not stay there. It just wasn't, it felt really constricting a bit. And I knew I wanted to go do other things, see more of the world, live other places. So but great place to grow up, but always knew that I would probably leave.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a younger brother. He is a software engineer, which is really fun because we'll get into what I do. But when I learned to code for my job, it was like this whole other way of communicating opened up with my little brother that we didn't have before then. So yeah, he's into all kinds of like programming languages that I don't do, but very similar logic to what I do.
So that's interesting. So the coding side of the brain is, I mean, it just, I'm not wired that way. Like, I just don't have that level of detail. And I think that there's something that you need to really tap into, and you and your brother both have that. Is that something that you think that you were born with from, your parents, or is that something that you think that that's something that you both just kind of developed and gravitated towards?
I think the interest was there. I enjoy things that require a lot of thought and a lot of complexity. But coding is interesting, and data science in general is interesting because it's the perfect combination. It is literally 50-50 between logic and black and white thinking and accuracy and detail,
Mm.
coupled with complete greenfield creativity, not really a set path how to go anywhere or get from where you are to where you want to go. So like, I believe, and maybe, folks listening to this have other thoughts, and that's great. But from what I've seen, the people who are most successful in that space are equal parts very, very logical and concrete, and very, very creative and sort of vaporous.
Interesting. So do you think that, so I've gotten to know you a little bit. I think you do. Do you think your brother leans on one side of being a little bit more on the greenfield side or more on the black and white side?
I feel like he's a more of a black and white thinker than I am.
Mm.
It also makes him a more, I would say, succinct coder than what
Mm.
I am.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
might take 4 or 5 more steps to get to a place where he was like, I'd have done it in one. So there's pros and cons to the degree to which you lean one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing that has had a significant impact on your life is that your father passed away from cancer when you were young. So I think you wrote 11, and that's something I never
Mhm.
knew about you, obviously, and especially in our weird virtual relationship. So talk to me a little bit about that, because one of the things that I like to always address in this is nature versus nurture, right? And so that obviously had a significant impact on your childhood. And then paradigm shifting events, which I think we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, about how it had an impact on you a little later in life. But just I mean, I don't want to go all deep into all this, but I
Mhm.
do. It was a part of your journey, so I'd love for you to share a little bit about that with me.
Yeah, I mean, so my dad passed away when I was 11. He
Mhm.
battled colon cancer. Get your colonoscopies, people. He battled colon
Mhm.
cancer for 5 years, which means I was 6 when he was diagnosed. So like, think about a 6-year-old kid, right? And the development that goes on between age 6 and 11. We grew up fast. My
Mhm.
brother was 2 when my dad got diagnosed. So our just maturity level at a very young age developed quickly. And also the ability to be independent and sort of figure things out developed very quickly. So in a lot of ways, I was a very normal, happy go lucky kid. But in a lot of ways, I was also a very serious kid, because there were very big real world challenges that my family faced that were not common. And it just required me to live and be a little bit different than what my friends had as their experience.
Yeah. Did your mom work then after your dad passed away, and so that you guys were kind of really I think, I don't know, I think we're roughly around the same age,
Mhm.
right? And so I think, just being that age, we were or that from that generation, very independent anyway. And then to put that on where you have a single mother that's raising 2 kids, how did that drive your, well, let's say middle school, high school experience?
What's interesting about my mom? She is tough.
Hmm.
She's a
Have to be.
tough cookie.
Yeah.
My dad passed away, and I will not name her employer, but
Yeah.
she went to her employer at the time and said, I have 2 young kids. So my dad passed away in May. School was ending. We were going to be home
Hmm.
like by ourselves. And she said, I can't do this. They're grieving. They need me. I need to take a leave of absence to be with them for the summer, just so that we can put our family back together. No joke. Her employer said, if we give you a vacation, we're going to have to give everyone a vacation. And
Ugh.
so she quit. She literally quit her job at that moment without anything else lined up, no college degree. I mean, really like risky move, but she spent the summer with my brother and I, and then went and eventually found her way into a position where she was working in the school district. So
Hmm.
that just by nature, for quite a few years, this wasn't my entire time growing up, but quite a few years, she had the same time off that we did. So she was on our same schedule, and it just never became a problem again. But talk about courage to be grieving yourself, completely reeling. I mean, everything that you expect from losing somebody at that age with that family makeup, it's exactly as you would expect. It is exactly as big of an upheaval as you would expect. To be in that position herself and then throw another curveball of uncertainty her way just to be there with us. That was such a big influential decision that she made to show me that sometimes the things you value are more important than just staying comfortable. The things that you value require bravery and require making difficult decisions. That's a lesson that you learn by watching, sometimes by watching other people do exactly that. And the older I get, now I have kids who are similar ages to what my brother and I were when my dad was diagnosed. And I think back, like, would I be able to be as brave as that? It just makes me so impressed with her as to what she was able to do.
Yeah, I just think, that fight or flight mechanism kicks in for people when they go through traumatic experiences, and your mom clearly had the fight mechanism kick in, right? Like she just scratched and clawed and just figured out whatever she had to do. And I'm talking probably a little bit more on the emotional side, just to rally for the kids, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
What was your jam in high school, like activities and stuff like that?
Oh man, I'm a mess. I mean, like, I feel like people ask these really like straightforward questions and a normal person would have a really good answer for you. And then there's me and my life experience. So the easy way to answer that question is to say I was a pretty competitive golfer in high school. The reason why I played golf though, is because it's always just like amazes me, the stuff that has to come out of my mouth on these interviews. But shortly after my dad passed away, I started getting sick and I experienced a ton of really weird symptoms, paralysis, numbness, blindness, you name it. Turns out I got, long story short, got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at a very, very young age and was very, very sick. So what happened is I had to quit most of the sports that I was in. I loved sports that related to like a net. So volleyball, tennis, stuff like that. Couldn't do it. Had to stop doing that. And what we found is that my multiple sclerosis attacks were very almost seasonal. They happened largely in the winter, which is not common. So I found that I needed to find a sport that I could play that would happen when it was less likely that I was going to be sick. So by that, I mean paralyzed or blind or whatever the case may be. So I played golf and I mean, absolutely loved it. Like it's a great sport for a lot of different reasons, but it just kept me, in spite of the circumstances, it kept me in a team participating. And the cool part about that, I mean, honestly, is that if you're good and you get to go to regionals and you get to go to state, I think you miss like 11 days of school, which was really awesome because I did anything to miss school in high school as well. I just didn't want to be there. So, I got to miss 11 days of school most of the time because I would go to regionals and state.
Well, I have to tell you, like full disclosure, I know very little about multiple sclerosis. So what are the long-term effects and like, is that something that you still deal with today? And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So MS is an autoimmune condition where your immune system attacks the myelin around nerves in your body. So typically it is in your brain and spinal cord, and it's the myelinated parts of it. So it's not the parts that keep your heart beating, keep you breathing. Those are not myelinated parts of your brain. Instead, it's things like motor function, your optic nerve is myelinated, your spinal cord. So depending upon, and the type that I have is relapsing remitting. So it gets bad and then it wanes off, and then it gets bad and then it wanes off. There's more detail there that is not that important, but depending upon where this lesion, so it looks almost like a cancer tumor when it's happening, depending upon where that shows up, you lose function. In my case, temporarily, wherever that is. So I've been blind twice. I've been paralyzed a whole bunch of times. And where I was extremely lucky, now let's put these two pieces together, right? I've got this mom who just lost her husband. It took them years to diagnose me because they thought that I was just attention seeking from being grieving from losing my dad.
Fascinating.
She just kept going back to the doctor and kept going back to the doctor. P.S. How much money do you have when you don't have a college degree and you're a single mom raising 2 kids? So kept going back to the doctor, MRIs, spinal taps, thousands of blood tests. I mean, you can't even imagine. And finally, we found a doctor who was able to diagnose me, but the treatment for it at the time, there was only one. Today, it's amazing how many options people have, but there was only one. And it was a medication that in today's dollars, like today, if you didn't have insurance, you'd pay $8,000 a month for that medication. So she was able to put me on it when I was young. And I've been on that same medication for over 25 years now. And it's shocking to say I haven't had anything happen for probably, I don't know, 18 years. I haven't had an exacerbation. So I still inject myself once a week just to, keep things on the steady. That boat's not rocking and we're not messing with it.
Yeah.
But I've been so fortunate, and that's not the way that it typically goes for people.
Wow. Holy smokes. All right. I'm glad.
I know you thought you were asking such a simple question.
No,
I'm sorry.
I'm
like landmines everywhere.
Well, we'll just get into the psychology thing, and then I'm sure we can spend another hour and a half on that. And so I knew just from, I knew what I was getting into when I asked that question. And frankly, like, I don't think a lot of people they just hear multiple sclerosis and they just hear it, and you could probably associate that with a lot of different things. So I'm glad you actually did go into that and dig in. So thank you very much. Plus,
yeah, you bet.
I'm super pumped to hear that you haven't had any effects in 18 years. That's mind boggling.
Yeah, it is. I have a few long-term symptoms that no one would know. Like I'd have to, even if I told you, you wouldn't know. But other than that, I'm incredibly fortunate.
Yeah. Okay. So you chose to go to, did you go to North Dakota for undergrad?
Yep. NDSU in Fargo for
And
undergrad.
Why psychology?
I thought it was such an interesting field. I wanted to understand largely decision-making. I wanted to understand how people make decisions. And I wanted to do, initially I thought I was going to go maybe into more of the clinical side of the field. So I had some interest there, but the field itself was always so interesting to me. So, minus having any other better game plan, I picked my major like a lot of people do. I'm like, well, that sounds fun. Let's do that.
Yeah. Did, was it everything that you thought it would be when you were going into undergrad? That's, I think I always just think about like when you're in high school and you've got this manufactured thought, you've got these, if you went to public school, you've got probably average, whatever they're called, like counselors that are trying to guide you a little bit. Right. And then they're trying to guide about 50 different kids per person, and they barely know your first name. And so was it everything that you thought it would be when you went, or was it just like, or was it better?
It was better. I loved it. I mean, I got lucky that the department that I was in at NDSU, there were faculty there who would take undergraduate students into their research labs. So I got research experience immediately. And we also were very fortunate that the statistics program at NDSU was very strong. So I sort of abandoned all of the advanced, like normal people math that I was doing in high school. Was happy to just set calculus aside and not do it anymore. But then what you do is pick up statistics, and you do a lot of like advanced data modeling in that way. And we got that right away in my undergrad training. So I felt really lucky from that. It was a great experience and not a huge school. So I felt like I could kind of make my mark and make an impact there without, feeling like I was drowning.
So, and then why did you choose to go to Nebraska to get your PhD? Is that a big school for getting a PhD in psychology, or was it convenient, or did some of your professors guide you there? What was that thought process?
Yeah, I mean, so I actually applied to a lot of schools for clinical, and then I had this moment where I sat down and said, do you actually want to do that? Do you actually want to sit in therapy, like talk to people all day long? Do you want to do that? And I decided that no, I didn't. And so 2 weeks before applications were due, I tore up all my clinical applications and started again. And I thought back on my own experience and I thought, I had been in a leadership role in some, organizations on campus. And I realized that the experience I had as a woman leading these large organizations was very different than the male counterparts that I had, who were leading organizations exactly the same size and complexity as what I was doing. So I decided I wanted to understand behavior, decision-making, cognition as it relates to gender and socioeconomic status and race and ethnicity. That puts you in social psychology. So I started applying to those fields, and Nebraska is a great program for that. And they also gave me a ton of money to go there. So it lessens the load of the student loans that you'll end up having. I tried really hard to get to the East Coast, but it didn't work. So Nebraska actually ended up being really great, like exceptionally great, really great faculty, great department, ton of freedom to do really great research independently there. And the statistical program was really strong again. So just so fortunate to have gotten into that school just by way of, applying to like 15 different places.
Hey, let's take a quick break and hear about a few of our supporters. If you're anything like me, you know enough to be dangerous when it comes to finance, yet need some help when things get complicated. All-in-One Accounting provides the right financial expertise and leadership to align with your stage of growth. From outsourced accounting and bookkeeping to strategic financial planning, the team of accounting rockstars at All-in-One Accounting are passionate about positively impacting the lives of their clients. Check them out at allinoneaccounting.com. All-in-One Accounting, taking our clients from financial chaos to business clarity and beyond. If you're a business owner wanting to save money on your overall real estate costs, I want you to give Carlson Partners a call. The team will help minimize your risk exposure and help you leverage the market to see maximized benefits to your next lease, purchase, or disposition. They've advocated and negotiated for hundreds of companies and saved millions of dollars in real estate expenses. With over 75 years of experience representing business owners, let them help you save time and money on your next real estate negotiation. Visit carlsonpartnersllc.com to learn more. The topic of talent is hot in organizations of any size, and I would argue none more than small to mid-sized businesses. That's why it's crucial to have a partner to help you navigate all the HR idiosyncrasies so you can focus on working on your business and not in it. Insperity is a full-service HR partner with a high-touch, high-tech platform helping owners work through challenges like employee retention, company culture, and benefits, just to name a few. Do yourself a favor and explore all they have to offer at insperity.com. Insperity. HR that makes a difference. If you're an entrepreneur or married to one, you likely have a shared vision on your future, but there's uncertainty on how to get there. That's where the team at eWealth Partners comes in. They see you as a dynamic duo, and as fiduciaries, they're committed to helping dynamic duos like you design a financial plan that aligns and empowers you. Navigating the entrepreneurial journey shouldn't add stress to your relationship. It should be fun and exciting. Visit ewealthpartners.com to learn how they help couples like you plan for their financial future today. eWealth Partners, holistic financial planning for entrepreneurial couples. Investment advisor services offered through AdvisorNet Wealth Management. eWealth Partners and AdvisorNet Wealth Management are not affiliated. And back to the show. So what was your first gig then out of, let me just establish this because I think we addressed it from the start of your undergrad to when you completed your PhD. How much actual schooling did you go through?
9.5 years.
Oh
so
gosh.
4 undergrad, 5.5 grad school. Yeah.
And I think you said at one time, like if you could make a job out of just going to school, that would be your dream job.
One of my old bosses from Target Corporation, his name is Mark Peterson. He's fantastic. He retired a few years back. And do you know what he does? He goes to the University of Minnesota. He enrolls, but he doesn't actually enroll in classes. So he's technically a student, which is free. You get a student ID card and he sits and audits classes, just random classes, theology, philosophy, gardening, economics. I mean, finance classes. He's like, I go get a venti Starbucks and I go sit in class. He is like my hero. Yeah, I'm like, my retirement's good. I'm good. I'm 100% stealing his idea. So way to go, Mark Peterson. You're amazing. He's like my hero.
if you can make that work, right? And that's a good retirement gig. But I like to say I'm a lifelong learner, but I think it's like a different
I
kind of
love it so much. I
lifelong learner.
love academics from that perspective.
Sounds. I literally was like starting to sweat when you were talking about that. That sounds like hell to me.
He doesn't take any tests or write any papers. I mean, he does the fun
Whatever.
part and he skips the rest of it.
I suppose. All right. Well, so what was your? All right. So that's actually a good segue. So what was your first then like real gig out of getting after you got your PhD?
Yeah. I mean, that's actually
9.5 years later.
Right?
Good Lord.
It just flew by.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That actually is a interesting tie back to, my dad passing away. You mentioned there was lessons that I learned later. And when you're in an academic program like I was in, what they're basically teaching you to do is to be a research one professor, to work in a university, to get grants, like large grants, do research and teach. I decided I didn't want to do that. And it is a terrifying thing to think about straying from that, because no one does. Like no one in my discipline especially does that. And I was sitting at my desk one day writing a paper, and I had stacks of journal articles all over the place. My apartment was just a disaster. And for some reason, I started thinking about, I don't want to do this for my whole career. I want to do more applied work. I want to do research in a company that, impacts decision-making in that way. And I thought about all the other things that I wanted to be doing at that time that I wasn't. I wanted to run a marathon. Here I was, this person who has MS, who can walk, which is amazing. Like it used to be a struggle to walk to the bathroom. And now there's no reason why I couldn't try. And there were a bunch of other things on that list. And if I was honest with myself, the reason why I wasn't doing them is I was afraid. I didn't want to tell my committee and disappoint them. I didn't want to try to run a marathon because what if I was slower? What if I couldn't do it? And so I sat there and thought about that. And my dad popped into my mind. And literally, if there is one thing you take from this conversation, please burn this into your mind. I started thinking about him and I thought, what would my dad give to have the opportunities that I'm wasting right now? Like, would he care? Would he care if he ran slowly? Or would he just be so grateful to be back and able to experience life? Would he worry? Would he literally sell his soul and live incompletely for the rest of his life so as to not disappoint 4 or 5 people?
Right.
I mean, that's ridiculous. It just punched me in the face. And so I told my committee I didn't want to be an R1 researcher. It was super disappointing. They didn't know how to help me get a job from that point because I was like the oldest person at the career center. It was like 20-year-olds and then me at the career center trying to figure out how to get a job. But I ended up going into applied research. So I worked for a company and did market research for a while. From there, I moved to a health insurance company where I started using all of those statistical skills that I had learned. That's where I learned to code, made some really fun, big mistakes there and learned a lot. Thank you, Medica. That was the company I was working for at the time. But really in that sense, because of the decision to stray away from academia and because of the timing of when I ended up in a company that had quote unquote big data, I accidentally became what I call a generation 1 data scientist, because data science didn't exist really at the time. But you learn to code, you write predictive models, and you shove them into a database, and that's machine learning. And so we just did it and didn't know that that's what we were doing. There was another woman who was learning alongside me at the time, or 2 other women actually. And it was just such a valuable accident to have happened. So applied research is largely where I've been, and analytics is largely where I've been for my career.
Yeah, I think that kind of going back to your paradigm shifting, or like you put it, your punch to the gut, right? I think a lot of people just need to have some type of life experience, and that might happen at a young age, like it did to you, and then you get kind of you kind of get mentally slapped upside the head when you kind of have your aha moment. And then I think some people, it doesn't happen until later in life because of, whether it be because of trauma or loss, or it becomes of just some kind of, they get shit canned from their job, right? And they're just like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
55, like I what am I supposed to do now? And then they just got to rally, right? And it's just so fascinating to me of just like how you just made such a life altering decision. But yet it's something that if you don't have the experience of life, that maybe isn't ever going to happen.
Yeah. And I get it. I get why it's difficult for people to wrap their heads around that, because who wants to think about it, right? The one
Mhm.
certainty that we all have in this life is that we're not getting out alive, right? Like,
Yep.
and so
Finite.
I like to talk about it as like a destinationless journey, right? We're all in a hurry. I'm like, where are you in a hurry to go?
Yeah.
Like, don't think about where you're actually going, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, I think about it every single day. If you open up a new browser tab in my Google Chrome, I have a plugin that says, actually, let's hit it. I have a plugin that says, now is a good time. I have 42 years, 5 months, 28 days, 9 hours, 32 minutes, and 32 seconds. That's my age as of right now. And
Yeah.
it's this plugin called mortality. It's
Hmm.
telling you, pay attention to how long you've been here and how much time you have left. And I think about mortality. I think about my own, like what matters to me in the context of what would I be sad to leave behind. I think about it every single day, and that is not an exaggeration. You mentioned my husband, he's an ER physician. His job by nature just weaves that into our lives as well. And we talk about that more than you could imagine. And at face value, it feels like it would be depressing, but it is the most liberating thing. Like, if you literally think about how critical your life is and put it in the context of disappointing those 4 or 5 people, my example of my doctoral committee, it makes that a stupid, easy decision.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's hard to execute. It's going to be an uncomfortable half an hour, but it is a stupid, easy decision. And we get ourselves wrapped up in making things difficult that actually are very stupid, easy decisions when it boils down to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a saying all the time is, and everybody uses it, but time is the only non-renewable resource. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think, that having that happen so early in your life, as if you're a silver lining person, which you kind of are, it's like, and almost in a way, it was a little bit of a gift, right? Like if you were looking at it from that perspective, is like, it just rocked your world, but it did some things that you'd never be able to experience otherwise.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, people sometimes balk when you say that. They're like, oh, what are you happy your dad died? I mean, come on now, shut up.
Yeah,
No, of course not. Was it worth it? Like, would I go back and choose it again? No, but you don't get to pick those things. But what you do get to pick is you get to decide, if that's going to happen to you, are you going to make it worthwhile? Was it worth it? No, but can I make it worthwhile? Yes, I can. Can I take something from it? Yes, I can. Can I continually learn from it? Yes, I can. And I learn lessons from that every single day when my kids hit the ages that I was at, when I think about what my dad must have felt like right now, getting diagnosed and knowing that it might not have a good outcome, and then having to look at us the same way that I look at my kids. Like, I literally think about it every single day, and it makes so many decisions just stupid easy and gives you the courage to do what you know is right, because ultimately you have one life, like, and you're the main character in it. So, the other saying that I like to say is, live like your life depends on it. I mean, because it does, like, it absolutely does. Your life is a sequence of small decisions, sometimes large decisions, but make them accordingly, because they're all going to add up to what that full experience is. And I don't want to look back. I don't want to say I want to have no regrets, because that's impossible. Like, sociopaths don't have regrets. Like, that's the only people.
Right.
But I want to look back and say that I tried my hardest and I tried all the things, even if I was really terrible at them. That's fine. But I tried all the things.
Yeah. Good segue on your journey, because you did a whole bunch of corporate stuff. corporate, right? Like,
Mhm.
Medica, and then you've spent a bunch of time at Target. I'm not going to get into all that stuff. I am a huge fan of entrepreneurship and small business. So we're going to punt on all that. Let's call that practice. That
Yeah.
was AAA baseball, right? And then, you made the decision, that you wanted to get into entrepreneurship. Why? Like, you probably had a really good career. You probably could have done a lot of different things.
Mhm.
You had one of the best bosses you've ever had that you just referred to, right? So why did you decide to do your own thing?
Yeah, I got approached by a startup company, and I ended up being, I don't know, like in the US, probably the fifth or sixth employee, led data for them for a couple of years. And they're still around today. They're actually a major like unicorn, like so freaking proud of that team. It's like, just kills me. They're just awesome. But at the time, they ended up having to make a really difficult, and I say this with like so much respect. So do not read into this and think there's anything negative here. They had
Mhm.
to make the hard decision to lay a bunch of us off. That is not easy. Like,
Right.
put yourself in your entrepreneur position. No one's happy to have to make that decision, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you're in that situation. I was one of the people who had to be laid off. And at the time, I was almost 9 months pregnant right before the
Mm.
holidays. And now that sounds very like sensational, dramatic. It really isn't. Like, I don't think they would have been able to pay me over my maternity leave anyway, given the size of the company. And I knew all that going in. So none of that was like, oh my God, whatever.
Yeah.
So here I was without a job. And I thought, this is no different than I would have been before. I was going to take a few months off anyway to be with my new daughter. This is my first pregnancy. And so I thought, this is fine. I'll figure it out. I don't know. I have a ton of connections here. Like, data is so easy to get into if you have good experience and a good reputation. Like, this will be fine. Well, then my daughter was born, and I'm like, what if? What if I like did my own thing? What if I just like did data science and I freelanced a little bit? And as you know, it's freakishly easy to start a company. Like, it is freakishly easy. So no joke, at about 2 a.m, I was on the breast pump, TMI, don't care. I was literally breast pumping with my laptop in front of me because you're just stuck there for a really long time. And I filed my first LLC. I'm like,
Mm.
I'm going to try it. I told my husband, I'll try it for a year. Who knows if I'll be successful? And if I'm not, I'll go back and get a job. No big deal. Like, I don't I don't feel tied one way or the other. I think I could be happy doing one or the other. So let's try it. So Decision Analytics, my first company, was formed at 2 a.m. on the breast pump. Its birthday is almost exactly the same as my first daughter's
Right.
birthday, which is
Right.
great. And
Yeah.
it is a origination story of a business that only a working woman mom
Right.
could tell.
Right. So is that LLC still alive, or has it been folded into anything, or
Yeah. Yeah.
what have you done with that?
So Decision Analytics parlayed me into meeting some business partners, and in a long journey that landed me in the president seat of a customer insight firm called Sprocket.
Hmm.
We help our clients grow and make better decisions using customer insight from anything from customer personas to journeys to what drives and detracts from satisfaction to product development to messaging. I mean, it's so competition and market, like you name it. We use a ton of data science. We use a lot of qualitative insight and research. But these days, Decision Analytics is kind of a holding company over everything else. But Sprocket and you mentioned Peak Mind are kind of what people see on my LinkedIn page in
Yeah.
terms of what I actually do these days.
I think like I said, I think you got your hands in a lot more than we could probably even dig into here. But so with Sprocket, how many people are at Sprocket now? What's the size of that organization?
It's me and a handful of 1099s right now. We're lean and mean. And
Mm-hmm.
part of it is just historically how the company has been structured in terms of the types of projects we took and the types of work we did. And part of it too is just being really thoughtful about what this next vision of the company looks like in today, like in the market and the landscape that we're in today, because it's very different. I don't even need to say it, than it was 2.5 years ago. So I'm being it is not like me. I have such a horrendous bias for action. Like, I mean, I've formed a company on a breast pump. Like my husband says, he's like, if you decide you want to have a swimming pool, could you just not dig it before I get home from work today? Like, I'd be out there with like a shovel doing it myself. Right. I have such a bias toward action, but this is one of those times in my life where I've had to decide, like, no, you need to have a little bit of restraint and actually sit and strategize and think about this, because what it could turn into it's already amazing, but it could be so incredible. And I want to do right by that. It's so funny. You talk about businesses as though they're like humans with feelings. Like, I want to do right by it, but it is.
It is. Well, I would almost like say like it's a little bit of it's like an amoeba, right? Like it just kind of, it shapes and bends and moves, but it's just not gender specific. So it is just a thing. So I think that's fantastic. And so you spend your time at both Sprocket and Peak Mind. I think the work that you're doing in both complement each other a little bit. So you're using different parts of your skill sets. I met you through Peak Mind, and you and Ashley, your co-founder, led our first event, which was virtual because it was COVID days, and it was amazing. And that's where I fell in love with you guys. So talk a little bit about what Peak Mind does. And then I want to make sure, like, the other thing too is like, what does the future hold for you? Like, you've got your hands in these two different things. Like, I want to make sure that we address that as well.
Yeah. So Peak Mind, the Center for Psych Strength, really where we play is in teaching people, call it skills they need in order to be more effective, be happier, be less stressed in life. It's funny because in the physical health world, let's say you have somebody who eventually gets the diagnosis of diabetes. You don't just hang out and wait and eat whatever you want and have no idea whether that Snickers bar is healthier for you than an apple or not. And you just do whatever you want and whatever. And then you one day end up in an endocrinologist's office. That isn't how it works. We have food and diet education. We know about, movement and the importance of physical health. We know about preventive care. There's so many steps that happen before then. We don't do that in mental health. We don't teach people the equivalent of what is a healthy food versus not. Like what should you be doing? What's the basic care and feeding of your own mind? We don't teach people that. And unfortunately, our minds, when left to their own devices, they'll eat the Snickers bar every day. Like they'll pick the most unhealthy path. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Totally different podcast to go to. Go listen to my podcast if you want.
That's your podcast.
Yeah, there's like hundreds of hours. Go have a fun time. But what we're trying to do is fill in that gap. So you don't have to wait until you're so depressed or anxious or whatever that your life is being impacted and then you go to therapy. Therapy is incredible. I've gone multiple times in my life. It's been incredibly impactful. But we need to be teaching people things before then. Like, how do you take care of your mind so that it's as resilient and strong as possible, as effective as possible? It supports your decision-making. It supports your relationships. It supports you in just how you want to show up and feel day to day. We're teaching people those types of skills that go beyond just get a mindfulness app and meditate once a day, maybe do some yoga. Maybe you write down what you're grateful for because you feel like you're supposed to do that, but you don't actually know whether it's working or are you doing it right? There's, a dozen or so things that we would want people to do on a day-to-day basis that literally change the way your mind operates and forms habits. This is the basics of neuroplasticity. We're basically using that to people's favor. So we do a ton of speaking, we do a ton of workshops and hands-on events. Like we said, we do licensed programming for larger companies, leadership development programs, that type of thing.
Well, I'll tell you, like in the last 2 years, we've done, I don't know, Coalition Nine's done maybe 12, 14, 15, something like that events. That was the first one. And it was still like, we still have people talking about it because I was actually sitting in a group that was one of our first groups, and they still talked about that. And they used some of the tools
Mhm.
that they gathered from that event as part of the conversation. So, there's work to be done, and it's the people need it. They know they need it, but they need their Sherpa, they need their
Yeah.
guides, and that's where you guys come in, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then well, before we peel out of here, I'm gonna make sure that people know how to find you. But your podcast is fantastic.
Thanks.
The way you address certain topics, I think it just feels good. And I was on there, like, just kind of doing a little bit of prep for the show. I think you have like 376
Mhm.
episodes.
It's a
That
lot.
is that is bonkers. So
Yeah.
I think this is episode like 35 for me. So
Woo!
yeah, well, I'll get
You
there.
can't get to 300 and some without 35. So you
Amen,
just keep
sister.
at it.
Yep, yep. Okay. We didn't talk about so the future. So, you've got your hands in both Sprocket and Peak Mind. Where do you see yourself going with stuff?
Almost in two different directions with each company. So Peak Mind, bigger audience. I'm doing a ton of speaking, a ton of keynoting, and I see that expanding. The message just needs to get out there. People need really good evidence-based information delivered in a way that isn't so sterile and academic and
Hmm.
researchy. Not
Hmm.
everybody wants to go back and get 10 PhDs in their retirement. So I want to give it to people in a way that they can apply. So that's the direction there. A lot more speaking. We're also developing an assessment. That'll be the first of its kind in the field of psychology. Much more to say there down the line, but that's the direction we're going there. And then in Sprocket, historically, I kind of mentioned this a little bit. Historically, we've worked with very large brands. We're so fortunate to have worked with, very recognizable, very reputable, amazing brands on these huge projects. And I love it. It's impactful. It's so fun. But I also have a heart for entrepreneurs and small business owners. I just do. And I know that there is, just because their ability to fund a project isn't as big as a large brand, it doesn't mean that their need is any less, right? They're still making decisions about, what do I build? How do I market it? Who are my customers and what do they need? How do I position myself against my competitors? Who do my customers think are my competitors? Not just who I think, who do they
Hmm.
think are my competitors?
Hmm.
So many of those basic questions are so needed for companies, especially in the early stages. So I'm really pushing into ways that we can take some of the frameworks and processes and methodology that we've developed in Sprocket and bring it down market to smaller companies so that they really can start to make decisions based on the sure footing of data in a way that has kind of been reserved for larger brands up until this time. So working on a lot there. So if you're a small to medium sized business and you're like, dang, I didn't think I'd be able to afford that, I'm like, come talk to me.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got stuff. We're starting to sign people on those products and it's going great.
Good. Love it. I'm gonna say too, you're gonna sit in on one of our Coalition Nine sessions in a couple weeks, and
Yeah.
the topic of mental wellness, I think, has come up, and so we're gonna leverage some of the work that you're doing on the Peak Mind side. But I think so many people are this podcast is going to drop in the summertime, and I mean, the people, entrepreneurs and leaders that are trying to juggle both taking care of the business
Mhm.
and taking care of home. And I empathize with anybody that has got kids in the summertime, because it's like, how does anybody with more than two kids take three kids to three different baseball games in three different parts
Yeah.
of the city, and the stress that goes along with that, and how to manage that, and be able to work through things in a healthy manner. And so you're going to come in and hang out with us for an hour and talk about that. And so thank you. I think the work that you're doing is so needed. Before we wrap up here, I'll make sure that we talk about how people can get a hold of you. Okay, here's a few more of our supporters. When you think of a typical CPA firm, you probably think of tax planning. Well, that just scratches the surface of what Boulay offers their clients. By providing smart, in-depth thinking from experts in accounting, audit, tax, and business consulting, they know what it takes to achieve financial success. Whether it's protecting your business, building your wealth, or securing your future, you can count on Boulay to go beyond addressing just financial matters and providing you with tailor-made, workable solutions. Learn about all they have to offer at boulaygroup.com. Boulay, helping you get there. Regardless if you're a startup just figuring things out or a medium-sized organization with a full team, having a legal partner by your side is crucial. Seiler Law is fiercely loyal to their clients and are passionate about removing headaches and roadblocks that can pop up during the growth of your business. Whether you need general outside counsel, are planning a business transaction, or even need someone to help guide you through the estate planning process, the team at Seiler Law are the advocates for you. Visit seilerlaw.com to learn more. Seiler Law, where experience meets pragmatism. Listen, people, everyone needs a bank. Not just any bank, a good community bank. From personal needs like checking and savings accounts to business services like financing and M&A support, the team at Flagship Bank is there to provide you with the assistance you need so you can spend less time thinking about your finances and more time enjoying what your money can do for you. To learn more, head over to flagshipbanks.com. That's flagshipbanks with an S.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Flagship Bank, investing in you. United Healthcare believes there's no limit to what care can do. UHC is continually focused on building a modern, high-performing health system via improved access, affordability, outcomes, and experiences. With a network of over 1.3 million care professionals and 6,500 hospitals and care facilities, United Healthcare is dedicated to connecting you to better health by offering quality benefits designed for affordability. Go to uhc.com for healthcare plans, resources, and more information. United Healthcare, helping people live healthier lives. Okay, back to the show. We're going to transition into 9 questions. You're smirking.
My stomach just dropped.
Oh gosh, you're fine. This is you if you've listened to the show, you know about. Well, I actually threw a couple of new ones at you because of your psychological background. I thought this would be fun. Okay, can you confirm to me that you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
I don't. I'm freaking out.
All right. I'm going to start out with a layup. What was your favorite TV show as a child?
Friends. No question. Right. I absolutely loved it.
All right. Sweet. Good answer. Which of the Friends characters was your favorite? This is not part of the 9 questions. It's a segue.
Joey?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's just so great. I just wish I could live life in his brain sometimes. He's so happy-go-lucky. I love him.
He is. Yeah. It's nice to be clueless.
And also, Joey doesn't share food, and neither do I. Do not think I'm going to give you my fries. I'm not. I'm going to eat them all. You cannot have any. That's just how I am. I don't share food, even with my husband. I just don't like sharing in that way. So sorry.
Don't touch my plate. What is one thing that you own that you wish you didn't?
One thing that I own that I wish I didn't. Can I just say most of the stuff in my house? I hate clutter. I hate it so much. And I literally would live in a tiny house if I could, with no things. It's impossible for me to even answer it, because it's like everything that we have. I don't want stuff. I don't like it. So I'm kind of very millennial in that way. Pretty minimalist.
Yeah. There's a lot that, I don't know if you've ever read Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, but there's a whole chapter in that book about how removing clutter from your life creates stillness, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, he's got a good podcast too.
He does, yeah. Yep. Props to Ryan Holiday. What's your favorite smell?
My favorite smell, lilac. Actually, we had lilac trees growing up, and it's kind of a nostalgic smell. And funny, I had Nancy Lyons, from the CEO of Clockwork, on my podcast a while back. And she has a similar zest for life, thinks about mortality a lot. And every time I see lilacs, I think of her, because during that interview, she said, every time it's springtime and the lilacs are blooming, I stop and I smell them. And I wonder, how many lilac seasons do I have left? And so it's just this fun, it's another one of those reminders of this is really important. I'm just going to stand here and smell this for a little while. So I love that.
Enjoy the moment. Yeah. If you, I don't know what direction you want to go with this. So if you're a professional athlete, or I think pro wrestler, Sorry. What would be your walk-in song?
Oh man, what is that? What is Good as Hell by Lizzo? I
Sweet.
do my hair
Yeah.
toss. Yeah, check the
Yeah.
nails. Yes,
I
that
love
would be
it.
my walk-in song.
All right, here's a new one. It's a would you rather question. I love would you rather questions, and I made the decision, starting with you, that every episode from here on out is going to have a minimum of one would you rather question. I started out
Awesome.
easy to see. I don't want to offend anybody, but maybe down the road I will offend people,
Great.
and I'll have you back on, and we'll see if I can offend you.
Awesome.
Would you rather be too hot or too cold?
Too cold. Yeah. I don't like heat.
This
I don't
humidity
tolerate the heat.
outside, it sucks.
I can't stand it. I'm not built for that. I run warm. No.
Yeah, me too.
No.
You can always put more clothes on.
Yeah. And I'm
Yep.
just like, I'm warm all the time anyway. I'm like a short sleeves in the winter kind of person.
Yeah.
Cause
Yeah.
yuck. No. Yeah.
Me too. All right. Would you rather be gossiped about or never talked about at all?
Oh, I'm going to say gossiped about, I guess. Just because anytime you do anything of substance, people are naturally going to have an opinion, and there's going to be a chunk of people who don't like it and don't agree for a variety of reasons. And if you're not talked about at all, I just can't imagine, and I hope I'm not offending somebody, but I just can't imagine that I'm not pushing myself to do impactful work. You know what I'm saying? Like that safety feels like I'm leaving stuff on the table then.
Yeah. There's some iconic woman in history that's said something to the effect of like, no one ever talked about like good girls.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
be a little bit of a badass and have
Mm-hmm.
people talk about you. And so I'm not going to say either one is right. I'm just saying that that doesn't shock me at all that you answered it the way that you did. What is the lowest grade that you've ever earned, and in what class?
Oh God. Okay. The lowest grade that I ever earned was a C-. I almost got a D PS in anthropology. I hated it. And that's funny because it's an adjacent field to psychology, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hated it so much. Australopithecus and whatever. Like, I don't even care. Like, I hate it so much. So I didn't study as much as I probably should have. Hated the class. One other funny low grade story. I got a B in scale construction in graduate school. And I think it's not because of how I did in the class, but I'm a wretched volleyball player. I blame MS for that. PS. I had to drop out because I couldn't walk. But anyway,
exactly.
The teacher of that class was like dang near pro. And I made the mistake of playing on his team at the department picnic. And so from that point on, I told my friends, like, if I walk toward the volleyball court, you come and tackle me. And my friends literally had to do it one year. They're like, you're going to fail a class. But yeah, I think I got a B because I was a bad volleyball player.
Oh, that's great. Good story that goes along with it, that you bookended that with. I appreciate that. What or where is your go-to for creative inspiration?
I love a good stack of Post-it notes for inspiration. And I also like the exercise of thinking about opposites. So like, let's say I'm just going to use an example from like what we do with clients. Let's say they're trying to get customers to do something. They're trying to get them to renew a subscription, click a button, whatever. A fun exercise is, okay, how could you get them to not do that? Like, what would you have to do to make it so that no one did that? And it starts to tell you the important pieces to lean into. I also like to think about like, if I'm trying to be creative in one industry, what's an opposite industry and how do they handle that problem? I like thinking about opposites a lot and messing around with Post-it notes.
Yeah, I love it. I love that opposite thing. That's great.
Yeah, it just makes your brain work in
a
a different way. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I think we weren't very succinct on an actual response. So this is your opportunity. How do you define happiness?
I would define happiness as your ability to be in life and accept life without judging it as it's coming.
Mm.
So, you know, we do have a lot of influence about our decision making and how hard we work and the things we try. But there's so much uncertainty, more than most of us are willing to accept in life. And there's so many curveballs that our ability, the last 2 years have been such a great example of that. Our ability to accept what's happening to us. We don't have to like it. We don't have to agree with it, but just accept the fact that it is happening and make decisions from there. That's when I'm at my happiest, when I'm showing up and doing my best inside of reality. I have this saying, I'm like, you can go, if you don't want the sun to come up, you can go in your front yard and you can scream at it all you want to, but it's going to happen and you're going to be
Right.
that crazy person yelling in your yard. Right. So I don't want to be the person yelling in my yard at the sun for coming up. Like, I want to be able to be in reality without judging it and do my best. And that's when I'm happiest.
Such a fantastic answer. You nailed 9 questions like it was like you knew what was coming at you. That was it. Nice job. Way to go.
Thank you. I will admit I'm much calmer right now than I was a few minutes ago.
You should be. You rock those things. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. You can reach out to me through Sprocket's website, www.SprocketCX.com. You can reach me there, or April@SprocketCX.com is my email address. You can also reach me at peakmindpsychology.com. We're in the process of revamping our website. So if it's like wonky donkey and your message doesn't go through, just shoot me an email. But yeah, those are the 2 best places. There's really fun stuff coming out, especially, like I said, if you are an entrepreneur, startup, small, medium-sized business, man, I have fun stuff coming up for you. So please connect. It would be great. And I've got goodies coming out for you soon.
Awesome. And after you're done with this podcast, go into whatever your podcast platform is, go over to the Building Psychological Strength podcast and subscribe to that, because that's a fantastic podcast. That's on my list of things that I listen to every week. You are so fantastic. I've loved being able to share you with more people. Need to know who you are. So I'm so happy to be able to share you with our listeners. And I'm so thankful to have you as a member of the Coalition 9 community. I was talking to Andy Risvold last week, and he's like, one of the most fascinating people I've met in like years has been April Seifert. And so, you know, to hear that from one of the people in your group just says that you guys are just killing it over there in your group through C9.
You know, we didn't talk about me saying this, but I talk about my membership in C9 all the time. Like, this is officially going forward a stupid, easy decision. Like, it just, I can't imagine going through the last year without being part of that group. And I also can't imagine not having that support mechanism around me as I think about where we're going in the future. I mean, truly, it is the most special, authentic, caring, compassionate, collaborative, all the great words, group of people. And it's because you curated these groups to be that way. And I'm just endlessly grateful that we got connected, and endlessly grateful that you decided to go in this direction and build this company and this organization, because I mean, it's not just lip service. I'm just so grateful for that group. So high five to everybody who's in my group. Excited to meet next, and high five to you for putting it together.
Thanks so much. Good people need to know good people, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you're great. So I'm going to wrap up. We've taken an hour of your life. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. On behalf of April Seifert, this has been the Power of 9 podcast. I am your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.